Welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. My name's Michelle Fleming and I'll be your host. Today we're going to be talking about the word subitizing. Let me flip this over so we can see how that's actually spelled. It's kind of a long word, but it basically just means the visual recognition of a number. So if, for example, I were to take a die and I were to roll the die, I could tell that that is a 1. I don't have to count 1. So if I rolled the die again, I could say that's 5, and I wouldn't have to actually touch each point and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This skill is actually a developmental pathway for acquiring the meaning of the first few number words, and because it allows the child to grasp the whole number, so the 5 as a whole number, but it's also made up of the number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which takes us into another skill, which is called hierarchical inclusion. So I want to share with you a little bit why this skill is so important, other than it's developmental. When we are working with young children, just being able to recognize that that's a 5 without counting it will lead us to the ability when they get older and they get into elementary school or into first, second, third grade, they use these tools which are called base 10 blocks. And these base 10 blocks work with our place value system, and these are considered 1s, and these rods are considered 10, and these flats are considered 100. We want kids to be able to recognize those without having to count each and every one. Imagine how long it would take if every time a child would have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It would take forever if they were just counting them. So we want them to be able to visually recognize that number. It'd even take longer if we were asking them to count 100. So that's the importance of the skill, is to be able to visually recognize the number. Now, most of us, most young kids, can recognize, really the brain only recognizes anywhere from 5 to 6 items at a time. So some things you can do at home with your child is just throw some beans out on the table, or spoons, or buttons, or their Lego toys, and say, how many toys do you see? First, your kids will probably count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you want to get them to the point where they can just recognize it. And 8's really too large for young kids. You want to start out with just throwing out 1 bean, and for them to say it's 1 without actually having to say count 1. Once they're able to recognize 1, have them see if they can recognize 2 and recognize 3, and just keep increasing that until you get to 5 or 6. Other things you can do at home to help with this skill is the dice. Any kind of games you play where they're rolling the dice and they're having to recognize the 5 or recognize the 6. So dice games are great. Another oldie but goodie are the dominoes. So let's share a quick game that's fun to play, and it actually takes a little bit more thinking than at first you might think it would. But you just take the dominoes, and you can use, if you're working with younger kids, you might want to take out all the dominoes that go larger than 6 on them. You might want to just work with 1, 2s, and 3 dominoes. But here's the fun game, and the whole family can play this one. You might even have to help each other with it. It takes me a little bit. I can always use some help. What you do is you count to, these go no higher than 6. If I look at each domino, the highest I have is a double 6 here. So I'm going to start counting 1, 2, 3. I'm going to count all the way through 6, and when the number I'm touching matches the number word I'm saying, then I can pick up the domino. So 1 doesn't match, 2 doesn't match, 3, 4 doesn't match, 5, 6. None of those matched. 1, there's 1 dot. I would pick up this domino. And then it would be the next person's turn. And they'd go 1, well that's not 1, so we don't pick it up. 2, that is 2, so I'd get to pick up that domino. And you just keep going around and around until all your dominoes are gone. So it gives them a way. They're saying a number, and they're also trying to match the number. Just a real quick visual recognition. They need to count first, that's okay. But just remember to start small and start with 1, build up 2, 3, 4, and so on. Another tool that I'm going to attach to the episode is called a tens frame. And let me move these dominoes out of the way. And a tens frame works very similar, but you'll notice that it's called a tens frame because there's 10 different spots and there are 5 in each row. And the reason that tens frame works nicely is that 5 gives us a landmark. Because remember I said usually kids can't remember more than 5 to 6. So if we know that there's 5 in a row, I would just put different objects. It doesn't have to be beans, it can be anything, and ask your kids how many beans are there. And again, build up. Start with 2, start with 1, build all the way up to 5, and then start adding in more beans. And hopefully they'll start making some connections and saying, oh, I see 5 and 4. So 5 and 4 together make 9. So those are just some ideas to help you with subitizing. And remember, it's a developmental pathway for higher numbers that kids work with in school. Join us for another episode of By the Numbers, and you can check out more episodes at mykidstturn.com.